것 아니면 You take me for a walk 언제 sycamore trees in the dark.
Welcome to Twin Peaks Unwrapped. I'm your host, Ben Durant, and beside me is...
Brian Kazaska, and I'm back. The last time we did a show, Scott was on the show. I was sick. And then, of course, I get a text message from Scott asking, hey, I have a show idea. And of course, it was the first day of me getting sick. And I'm like, what is this? Scott has some curse on me where I know if he's going to text me to be on our show, I'm going to get sick. So I'm hoping it will never happen again, but I'm hoping to have Scott on the show many more times. So Scott is back. He's brought some people with him that one of them we've been really wanting on our show for a very long time, and this is very exciting for us. But also,
I have to interrupt you already. Because you're really going to go with you were sick? I mean, the last time that I came on, you were so obviously drunk. You were slurring your words. Ben had to stop taping, made you go home.
I know.
And so this is called sick now, is what we're calling it?
Yes.
It's an embarrassment, Brian. It's really an embarrassment.
I was drunk off power. What can I say? I had to go home on my own Zoom call. Like, go home.
Well, it is a disease. So yes, he was sick.
Yeah, I was sick. But anyway, I feel a lot better today. But Scott, who do you have? We just heard a female voice, so you got to tell us who are the two people you have.
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you as always for having me. But I did bring two of my cohorts today. We already heard from Melanie Mullen, who is producing the event that we're going to be talking about. So hello, Melanie.
Hello.
And then we are very excited to have all the way. And I'm going to tell a story before I introduce him because it connects with what I want to say. So if anybody's heard me tell any stories, it always starts with, I was at the post office, because that's where that's the only time I interact with the humans. And so I was at the post office and I just found out, this is not a joke. I was there and the guy asked me, hey, where'd you get these boxes? I need a box. And I said, what are you shipping? And he said, a Lost Highway vinyl record. He doesn't know who I am. And I said, do you know Lost Highway? And he said, I know everything about Lost Highway. And I say, do you know that there's a book about one? And so we ended up talking and he listens to Twin Peaks Unwrapped.
What a small world.
Wow.
And
you sure that wasn't me?
No, it wasn't you. Because I think I would recognize you. And I was saying that we're going to do this event. And I said that George Griffith is going to be there. And this guy in the post office says, that fucker Ray. And everyone in the post office looks because they think this guy just said that fucker to me. And I got a taste of what it must be like for the other guest that we have today, Mr. George Griffith, that fucker Ray. Welcome, George.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
I mean, does that happen to you? Like you're just like out in public and someone just says that fucker Ray?
It does happen from time to time, and it does turn heads from occasion depending on the environment. It usually comes out of like a moment of enthusiasm. But I don't mind it. I like it.
I mean, I'm Melanie. Do people say that fucker Melanie to you?
Well, it's normally a different word, but yeah, it's similar. Yes, I can't even walk down the street. It's ridiculous.
So Scott, why do we have you on the show today? What?
I don't know. Why do you have me on the show? Because that's what the guy at the post office said next. You're on that show? So the three of us, Melanie, George, and I, are hosting an event in LA where we're going to screen Firewalk with Me on June 23rd and Lost Highway on June 24th. And Melanie, why don't you explain the event and where it is and things like that, because that's what Melanie does.
Yeah, so exactly what Scott said. So basically we're doing this to coincide with the release of Scott's newest Lynch inspired books, Fire Walk with Me, Your Laura Disappeared, and Lost Highway, The Fist of Love, which I'm really excited about because Lost Highway is, one of my favorite, probably my favorite Lynch film, and probably his most underappreciated in my opinion. And I love Fire Walk with Me too, but I, keep that all within the Twin Peaks universe. And anyway, I'm not gonna go into that. But so basically Scott, Scott and I have been frenemies for many years. And he knows that planning events and, dealing with all of the logistical things that go with that are something that I'm experienced with. And, he called me one day and said, I'm thinking instead of just, organizing a book signing for, my new book, I really want to do a Lost Highway screening. Do you think that that's something we could do? And I said, all right, well, let me look into it. So I was looking around, I really wanted to go the art house route. I didn't want to rent space in a really big corporate owned theater. So I was thinking about this smaller theater I had been to some years back called the Music Hall, which is a 3-screen theater in Beverly Hills. They used to be owned by Lamley, and then within the last few years they were sold, and now it's just owned by 3 people who just decided, I guess, to buy a movie theater together, 3 film lovers. And so I contacted them and they got back to me and they were really excited about it. Turns out the person we were talking with, Peter, who's one of the owners, he's a big Lynch fan as well. And then he kind of proposed the idea of like, oh, well, maybe we could also screen Fire Walk with Me. And at first I was like, oh yeah, because what the world really needs is another Fire Walk with Me screening. But okay. And so that's kind of how it turned into a 2-day event. And yeah, we're really excited. Like Scott said, June 23rd, we're going to be doing a screening of Fire Walk with Me, and it's going to be followed by a Q&A with special guests, and it's going to be hosted by George Griffith of Twin Peaks: The Return, who is with us today. And we're very excited about that. He's a Lynch fan first and foremost, who got to live the dream of acting for David Lynch. So we're really excited to have his enthusiasm and also just his behind the scenes knowledge of working with Lynch that he'll be able to add to that panel. And then we'll also be selling and having Scott sign his books in the lobby afterwards. And then June 24th is pretty much the same thing, except we'll be screening Lost Highway. Again, we'll be having some special guests who were also associated with the film. We're still working on that guest list, but we're pretty excited about who we have so far. Peter Deming, who is Lynch's top cinematographer choice, and Debbie Zoller, who was the makeup artist on Lost Highway and continued to work with Patricia Arquette afterwards. So yeah, we're still adding to that list, and we're really excited about it. And we think it's going to be different from other Twin Peaks events, because I think it's going to be more of an educational event than a vanity event. Let's just see what faces we can get here. We want it to really be about a love of filmmaking and just the art of cinema. And I think that's really what it's going to be. So I'm really excited about that.
And George, how did you get this hosting gig? I don't remember you ever hosting anything related to Lynch before. How did this come about?
I never have hosted anything before. Well, Melanie is right. I am a lifelong David Lynch fan. That's actually how my initial connection to David happened. I was helping prepare a show to interview David when Catching the Big Fish came out. And I had created like sort of a flow chart of like connecting like his film to a lot of the things that he was saying about meditation in the book. And basically, if David said this, you could make this connection to this. And it was like a 20-page document. And as the time for the show came closer, they finally called me and they said, "Hey, nobody wants to learn all this stuff, so can you do the interview?" And so that's how I met David, and that's how we first became friends. So I just have a natural knowledge, because in real time I've been a real enthusiast, and I've always followed him. He's my favorite. And then, when we were at the Real Twin Peaks recently, Melanie, Scott, and I were all able to be together in person, and sort of, at least for me, to really experience one another's sort of like passion for David's work, not just exclusively about Twin Peaks, which is deep and I think everlasting for all three of us, but we were able to talk about a lot of the things that were connected, and as Melanie said, just about the amazing impact that David has had on the art form, and just what a global luminary he is, and Scott, we joked about how we could just talk forever, and we did, and we had a couple sidebars, and I got outed for who my favorite Donna was at the one Q&A and all this stuff. We were just laughing, and it was real easy. It was just real easy to talk. And Melanie and I had met many, many years ago when The Return first came out. And so really it was just one of those, as you guys are familiar with, because I know I met you at a Festival Disruption in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was in 2018, I think. Those events, they really are, they're adrenaline filled, and they're also really heartwarming, and they're really beautiful and memorable, and they're just so impactful if you're somebody who cares about these works of art that are really going to go on far longer than any of us,
Mhm.
And so I'm just really flattered and very humbled and very excited to be asked. And I do feel very up for the test, because I got a lot of questions, and I can't wait to talk to everybody.
I'll put you on the spot. Which film is better, Fire Walk with Me or The Lost Highway?
Well, you can put me on the spot if you want. I don't know if I'm going to take that bait, but I have very different relationships with both of them. I saw both of them when they came out, and it didn't take me 25 years to love either one of them. They were close and dear to me right away. And I've returned to both of them many, 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 many times. As you might imagine, I have my connection and my sort of fixation with Fire Walk with Me deepened in many ways when I received my materials for The Return, and when I realized that I was going to have tendrils connected to a lot of the mythology that was happening in that film. But Lost Highway, there's just not many things cooler and sexier and more mysterious in the world than that film, so I would never pick one over the other. But my obsession for both of them has just been in tandem. I love them both.
Yeah.
Well, I want to follow up on that, George, because I don't know the answer to this. What happened for me the first time I saw Fire Walk with Me, because I wrote about it in the book. But what was your very first experience? So many true fans were disappointed. Can you put yourself back into that first night when you saw it that Friday night? What did you think the very
Yes.
first time?
Well, I was in New York. I had just gotten out of high school, and I was in New York, and I had been very obsessive about acquiring all the ancillary materials that had started to come out, especially the diary. I don't believe that I was set up for failure, so to speak, like people who weren't so immersed into that. I was prepared for a sadness, and so I just was really moved by it. And when I got home, I remember I only talked to two other people, and it was I was at NYU, so there was a lot of fervor around Twin Peaks. But I talked to a couple people, I remember, they had a reaction that surprised me, which was like they wanted something more like their experience of seeing the pilot, and then the show. As you guys remember, following the show all the way through was very challenging back then. So people had like a variety of, I believe, impressions on what the show was anyway. To see all of it, you had to be taping it or borrowing tapes or part of a watching group or something like that. And, I was in a dorm and nobody even had a TV, there was no internet. I remember, I was just starting my journey as an actor, and I was in a really intense program. I do remember just thinking that Cheryl Lee was it, as far as like a bar was being set for my age. Like I remember thinking River Phoenix was where it was at, and then when I saw her, I thought, wow, she's it. That's what I want to do, because I had never seen somebody in my generation, and I think we're pretty close to the same age, not just have the opportunity, but really just to allow themselves to be so consumed and possessed, and just to give such a generous performance, that was so heartbreaking and so funny and so endearing and so just nuanced and dynamic and, and really unforgettable. It just made a huge impression on me. And, right after, I think I told you this, Scott, about a year later, I was in the theater at Circle in the Square, which is where I was training. And man, I would think about Fire Walk with Me just a lot, because nothing really ever really topped the performance, and like when you're a young actor, I think there's a lot of value in obsessing over performances that are kind of what you want to aspire to, so I would just run over scenes, and I'd run over. I had a tape, I had a videotape of it by then. And all of a sudden one day, Cheryl Lee walks across the lobby, and someone asked me if I was okay. I remember that. I leaned back against the locker, and I was like, what is that? I just like, what's going on here? I couldn't believe it. I mean, like my heart stopped. I couldn't believe it. And she was there to do Salome. She was coming to do Salome with Al Pacino. And I saw Al, like, a couple hours later, and I would have thought that would have been the one that broke me over, And I was very
You're like,
excited.
screw The Godfather. I saw
Don't
Laura
get me wrong.
Palmer.
When I saw him, I was like, Michael, But she did Salome there that year, and she rehearsed with Al my whole first year at the conservatory. And I could hear them. If you went to certain parts of the theater, you could hear Al and Cheryl rehearsing their scenes, because Al loves to rehearse, and he loves to like run subtext, and he loves to like, let's do this again, and I just couldn't believe my fortune. I mean, I already felt so like blissed out and blessed to like be, it was a real hotshot kind of cool program. And but to be there for that was like extraordinary. And then when I saw the play, I've never forgotten that either. And she was unbelievable.
Would there have been an opportunity to tell her about that story? Like, I don't know if you guys even crossed paths with Twin Peaks: The Return.
We didn't cross paths in The Return, and no, I've never shared that story with her. I still have my ticket stub stuck in my copy of Salome, actually. But no, I would definitely tell her at some point, I'm sure.
Maybe she'll
We got to
be
make this
there.
happen.
Yeah,
if she would come to our Q&A, I will definitely have to mention it, because it really, it was difficult for me to imagine something having the same impact on me as Fire Walk with Me, and seeing her live. And I remember we had like third row seats, because the theater would give us free tickets because we were students, but not for Salome. So it was like the most I had ever spent like on a ticket. And we had really, really good seats, and it was so good. She was so good.
George did tell me that story about, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. And I'm not lying, and I haven't told this to George. I can't stop thinking about it, because I think, what would I have done in 1993 if Cheryl Lee just walked by, I think I
I would
was
have fainted.
looking at video time. If she walked through video time, I mean, I think like I would have died. I mean, I like to think I'd go up to her and be like, "Hey, I'm Scott Ryan, let's be friends." But I think I would have died.
It really challenged my cool, I'll tell you that. But
Yeah, I believe
it
it.
was
I can't
something
stop
else.
thinking about that story.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So Scott, for this LA event, it's 2 nights. Am I right that you can buy them individual the Friday and Saturday, but there's also a like a group rate, or like you get both of the showings?
Correct. So what the theater wanted to sell them just one at a time, but I wanted to make it a deal for people. So we convinced them for a couple weeks to give it a deal where you can get both nights for $40 or singly for $25. And then also a really cool thing has happened at the theater. They've been around for 100 years, and for 100 years they've been open every day. Our tickets went on sale, and the next day they had a power outage, and it's still happening. And they had to shut for 3 straight days. So
They're
when you
still
go,
closed.
yeah,
They're
they're
still
still
closed.
closed. So you
Oh.
can't buy tickets at this exact moment. And I believe it's all my fault.
And to be clear, we are recording a few weeks before this airs, so I think by now probably this is should come out on the 21st to coincide with the anniversary of the Twin Peaks season 3. So hopefully you can get them right now. So
Right.
don't tell me you can't. Go to the website
No,
right
you
now.
can. The links there, they just have it blocked right now because it's an in-house ticketing system and they have no power, so they can't generate tickets. But Melanie, how long are they doing the deal, and what's the deal on the deal?
Well, so the 2 for $40 deal is supposed to go until June 9th at 8 p.m. But at this point, since we've lost like a week on ticketing because of this power outage, I may just have it go another week. I don't know. I don't know if that'll be necessary, but I feel like that seems fair since we lost a week on that. So,
And we have Mike Malone for Firewalk with Me. He was the set dresser for all of Twin Peaks. I've interviewed him before. He knows everything. Like this is a good get. We have feelers out to everyone who's in the Firewalk with Me book and the Lost Highway book. If we get big guests, we're not gonna announce it because we want a surprise, and we don't want you coming because
Right.
we have a big get. We want you to come because we're going to have discussions like this, and you get to see the movie, and to support.
Well, you've already got George, so you've already spoiled it. So people already are going just to see George here.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing. You already have George leading a conversation. So what more do you need? And Peter Deming and Debbie Zoller are amazing. George, tell us something about Peter Deming and Debbie Zoller, since you worked with both of them on The Return. And Mike Malone. And you worked with Malone on The Return.
Yeah,
too.
Mike's the greatest. Mike worked on Medium too, Patricia. Yeah, Mike's been around. Mike knows everything. Mike has the greatest stories. I don't want to tip those cards at all, but like I had dinner with him like a month ago, and he texted me. He said we should have coffee before this Q&A. Strategize a little bit. He was like getting heavyweight about it, but he has endless amazing stories. And Debbie, Debbie has such amazing confidence about what she's doing. You know what I mean? And like what a freaking Golden Glove soft touch she is. Because no one looks worked over. Everybody just looks perfect. And I had a couple of special things happen. I had a hole in my head, which like she talked about in your interview, Scott. She kind of like walked the horse all the way up to the water, and then David does the painting for blood and stuff like that. He likes it because I definitely remember going, David Lynch is painting me right now. I remember thinking that. That was like, I'm not letting this get lost for a second, And I loved her. I loved her energy. I loved every time I saw her. There was a few times where I was sitting with Kyle And she just like, what a cool room she would make, you know? She's just beautiful person, beautiful spirit, and she's really, really creative. She just feels very active, you know, and like has a real opinion and is contributing all the time, you know, and I really, really appreciated that. And Peter Deming, you know, I'm a filmmaker, and I had such a like great admiration for him prior to my first day of working with him. I felt so relaxed with him. You know, David sort of like, I just felt like he introduced Kyle and Peter to me at the same time. And, you know, if you had asked me before, I think I would say, yeah, I had to like, I was really nervous. I don't know. I mean, I definitely had to regulate a few things, seeing what Kyle looked like for the first time, because that I couldn't anticipate. You know, to be brought into people who had known each other for so long, but to still feel like I was included, you know, like, and have like such an ease and a sort of an instant familiarity and like a relaxation was so key. Because as an actor, you know, the DP is like the last line, you know, it's the final sort of human in there with the director, you know. And boy, he's so impressive. He's just watching him work with David in this sort of dance and this sort of ability to, you know, to serve David's instincts, but to also be allowing his opinion and his viewpoint to be present and to be offered like in a confident way, was just really such a like masterclass for me, you know, because there was a lot of trust there, you know. Man, he could make things happen fast, which is not always what happens on movies, you know. And he definitely, you know, the boss would be like, you know, what are we gonna do? All right, this is what we're gonna do. And you could just see Deming be like, okay. And it was just like real, it was just cool, you know, it was so cool. And I do remember one time, one of my favorite nights was, you know, after the woodsmen work over Coop and I run to my car, one of the takes, Deming and Lynch were in the back seat, like crunched, crunched down. And it was another one of those moments where I was like, man, high five, G. You got Lynch and Peter Deming in the back seat, you know, like if you could have only told, you know, 18-year-old George that this was going to be happening one day, it might have been a little easier to get here. But it was so great, you know, because there was a little bit of business that I did with that car that didn't end up in the show that I was real proud of, my stunt driving. And David was in the back, like telling me what to do. Peter was back there with him. It was amazing, you know. But I love all these people that you're talking about. I felt maybe I made an effort to know every single person. You know, I was there for a lot of days, you know, on the return, and from working in much smaller things and maybe things that didn't have the same personal, enormous sort of impact, profound kind of feeling as Twin Peaks did. I would always try to learn people's names, but Twin Peaks was just, everybody was so, it was the cool, in terms of the way that people related to one another and treated each other and supported one another. I hadn't experienced something at that level, you know, and so I definitely tried to have connection with everyone that I met at some point when I would work, whether it was during meals or during breaks, or I never stayed in my trailer because I wanted to watch, you know, and just watch and listen and just watch people relating with each other. And it was just amazing, you know. And Malone, you know, that guy is just, I mean, he's been, you know, he's one of the pictures in Room to Dream, you know, when you're flicking through the pictures, he's in one of the pictures, you know. He's a big important person for what goes down. David really trusts him also. He'll ask him a lot, like, yo, Malone, you know, what do you think? And can you do this? And I go, yeah, you can do it.
So Scott, there's a couple of things I want to talk about besides this, but before we move on, can you let the people know again, where do they go to get tickets for this event? Any other information you want to provide before we move on?
I think you go to Luminaire.
It's LumiereCinemaLA.com. So it's LUMIERE CinemaLA.com.
And we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, and then you select, it doesn't matter if you go to Firewalk with Me or Lost Highway, they both have options for both nights, and you can select both nights for $40. You're only paying $20 for a nighttime movie in LA that's going to have a Q&A. And, I think it's going to be a great event. This is sort of a test thing for a larger event that I'd love to do the following year, kind of like we're doing in Dallas and things like that. So we would love for people in LA to come out and support us and all that. It's going to be very, very exciting.
So Scott, what you're saying is if you want more events like this, you have to show up for this one. I mean, this is important. Yeah.
Get the ball
Yeah.
rolling, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, and have these moments. And just like George said, like, you just don't know what it's like to go and mingle in the lobby and get to share your theories and have all that stuff. It's magical to have these events.
To add on to the event itself, I think it's, everybody is there, but it's the Twin Peaks fans too. Everybody getting together, I think, is like one of the best things ever. I think it's a great community. No matter you have George there, and it could be a couple people you've never heard of, you'll have a great time. But the people you might meet that will sit next to you, you might make a lifetime friend. I mean, we all
Brian,
made
you
friends.
and I know we've gone to these events, and it really is. It's about the whole experience, seeing the people that have worked on the shows and the movies and things like that. But it's also about the community, hanging out with other people that just appreciate this work. And yeah, we've always had a good time for all the events we've done.
And I would say, George, I would say you're part of the Twin Peaks community. I know you're a star in the show, but I feel like you come to these events and firsthand. I remember you walked by me. This is a long time ago in New York when they did the weekend. They played all 18 episodes or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And at Mocha in New York, MoMA. Sorry, what? Yeah, I couldn't remember. I'm like, what? So,
you're drunk. It's fine.
I'm drunk. I'm drunk off of Buble. So anyway, yeah, you walked by me, and I remember I texted Ben because I was running late, and I was like, I think Ray walked by me because I didn't know your real name at the time. I was like, I recognized someone. I think. And Ben's like,
actually, Brian said he's taking pictures of things, and he was like,
I saw you take your phone out, and then you showed up. You sat behind us, and I remember the buzz. The people were all talking that you were there, and Ben was like, "We have to go say hi. We have to go say hi." Now I'm the shy one. I was like, I don't want to be rude. I want to bother him. I don't, that's not my. And Ben just went right over there and said hi to you.
But George, you were so cool. I mean, you said hi to me, but you also, I know there was other fans there that said hello, and you gave them time, and that meant a lot to the people that were there.
Well, thank you very much. That was incredible being able to watch the return with people. I had watched that whole show by myself, and I was like, I'm not the only one who thinks this is funny and amazing and sad and wonderful and worth going in the middle of a blizzard to sit for 6 hours a day. And, I remember Raj gave me a blue rose. I still have it. He put it on my seat. I said, hey, this is where I kind of like to sit. If there's any way you can hold my seat, I'm not sure what time I'll get. And he had a seat for me. And, look, I always had time for Twin Peaks fans. You were right. I am one. I would have been there if I wasn't in the show. I was excited for the return. Me being in the return was a big surprise to me. I never expected that to happen. I did write David a letter immediately when he made the announcement, because I had written him letters quite a bit after meeting him, because I met him in 2009. A lot of time passed, and I wrote him a letter when the tweet came out about the gum, came out. I grabbed my typewriter. I was like, I'm going to be a PA on this thing or something. And I wrote him a letter saying, I can work on the show. I can make coffee. I can do anything. And I threw that sucker in the mail because I would always send him snail mail. And then like the next day it was like, all right, everything's off. And I was like, oh man, I sent that letter, and now they just called the whole thing off, Yeah, I didn't, when Joanna had me in, I thought it was just like a kindness of David, or maybe I would get to I thought like maybe I'd pump gas and be like, have a good one, or something. And I would have been very over the moon about that. Trust me, I have never-ending gratitude about being a part of it. And I'm at the end of a rewatch of The Return right now with Sarah. We're on part 17. I'm reading John's book again. I mean, out loud for the second time. I love that world. I appreciate the fans. I feel a kinship to them. You know what I mean? And I hope that without getting like too weird, that they always feel very comfortable saying hi. Because apparently I don't always give a friendly vibe off, even though I'm very friendly.
Well, we
I d-
know you're really friendly, but
Yeah.
like any celebrity, I'm like, I don't want to bother them. And Ben's like,
Right.
we gotta say hi.
It's a once in a
you're
lifetime
awesome.
chance here to do this.
Yeah. But you've been
Wow.
at other things now, and I think you're part of the community.
I
like,
agree.
Through and through, and I think you're an amazing person, and
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think the Twin Peaks community is one of the most very special, and it's very welcoming, and it's so different from any other community out there when it comes to like a show or a movie or some sort of that nature.
Yeah, I agree.
And George, I just want to say that Lynch must have saw something in you. When you're first on screen, there's something charming and just wow about you, and that you really do have this star quality. Just that first scene that we see you, it's just like, who is this person? The first time I saw you, it's like, I've never seen this guy before, but there's something just amazing about him that is just so charming and wonderful. So Lynch saw it, and I think the fans, of course, have seen it too, how incredible you are as an actor.
Well, thank you, Ben. I happen to know that David thinks I'm funny. So I think that's really that's what got me. That's what got me in.
And maybe just talking a little bit more about you. Before this whole event, there's another event going on, the David Lynch A Complete Retrospect at the Texas Theater in Dallas, Texas. And you will be showing your film. You wrote it, you directed it, and you acted in it from the head. And that you'll be there live showing a 35mm version of this. I mean, how exciting is that?
To quote the boss, that is beyond the beyond. I can't believe. I'm so excited. I'm very grateful to Scott for championing it, and to be a part of that is extraordinary for me as a cinephile and as a David Lynch fan. To be programmed with his film. I'm between Spielberg and Lynch, I think, that day. I can't even believe the insanity of that. But From the Head has very Lynchian influences, that have become more apparent to me, I think, as the years have passed than it did at the time that I made it, and like a number of David's films and like David's art, it happens in a localized, in a small place where a lot happens. And and From the Head all takes place in a bathroom, and it is how David cast me. He really likes the movie a lot. He's told me when I showed up on set, people kept saying, "Oh yeah, David's been talking about your movie." And that was me. They were like, "Yeah, the bathroom thing, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's mine. That's mine." And I couldn't believe it. I told him when I interviewed him that I had made a move. Well, real quickly, I tell you the great story is that I said I'm working on a feature. I had asked him if he was done shooting on film, because he had talked about that in Catching the Big Fish. And I said, I've been sticking to my guns. I really want to shoot on film. I've never done a feature before. I want to shoot on film. And he said, "Yeah, what's it about?" I said, well, it's about a bathroom attendant in a strip club in New York City in the 90s, and it all takes place in the bathroom. He said, "Great." And I was like, that's been zero person's reaction to my elevator pitch. And it really gave me a lot of confidence. He said, "Keep Final Cut." And I listened to him. I never thought I'd see him again. So during this little lunch after the interview, I asked him like a lot of questions. And I was just feeling like we were having a nice connection. And at the end, I said, "When I finish it, can I send it to you?" And he said, sure, man. And I did. And I thought, I thought that'd be it. I sent it to the address that I had, and I never expected anything. And he wrote back to me.
Ugh,
He watched it.
awesome.
He watched it in his theater, and and he wrote back to me, and he loved
That's
it.
something.
Yeah.
Isn't that great that you were
And
able to
Yeah.
get advice from him, or at least even talk about it before he even worked? Like, talk about timing and how things all worked out that you were able to have that
yeah,
moment.
it was profound for me, to meet him and to ask him about things that he talked about in Catching the Big Fish, and to ask him about how I should be treating myself. And he had an opinion about that. And, I had just begun meditating before the interview because I knew that that's what it was going to be primarily about. And yeah, it's been an um, amazing journey with the things just keep happening with David, but he is magical, he's magical in many ways, and he really, he says what he means what he says. And that's like amazing for an artist,
Just looked up the date. It's May 31st at 9 o'clock. You can get tickets for George's movie in Dallas, Texas. And I will be there doing a live Q&A with George after the screening. So if you're there, you can ask George some questions about the film. And it's been kind of fun because I have not really talked to George about the
Yeah.
movie at all. And I was just gonna, when he was doing his pitch, I was gonna interrupt something. And I'm like, oh, I forgot I can't, because we don't want to have the conversation beforehand. But I am gonna tip one little thing here because I think it's fun. And I haven't even told the theater down there that I'm going to do this, but 10 minutes before we screen George's film, I'm going up on stage and telling everyone to pee. Because the one thing about his movie, and I'm not kidding, because
Bathroom.
George gave me a copy of it at the real Twin Peaks thing, and then Jen and I watched it when we got home. I mean, we had to pause it to go pee. You have to pee in this movie. The whole movie is in the bathroom. And like, don't fool around. So I'm going to tell people, like, if you even kind of think you have to use the facilities, get up and go before this movie starts, because you will have to pee. That's how good it is. You really feel like you are in this bathroom. So there will be a pee countdown.
I might still have the list. It's very funny. I had a description of all the different sounds for each character, like what each person sounded like, because they were like, all right, we got the sound. And I was like, oh, no, you don't. I've got 45 of those I need, so I have, and in the cinema, you can really hear the difference.
That's too funny. That's great.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
Well, I feel like we have a few minutes before we go, but George, maybe I could just ask you a few things about Twin Peaks. Mostly, like, do you have a favorite story or experience working on The Return?
Every time I was on set, something else would sort of top the other thing. I do remember. I'll tell you one thing about my first night. My first night, I was really ready to go. We did Beulah's, and then we drove to the diner directly. And I had never worked on something where there was so much of a second unit that like they were just ready for you at the next thing. But when we were done Beulah's, then I had come out, and I was with David and Nicole, and we came out a couple times. And then, David said he wanted to talk to me before we went to the diner. So we sat back in the corner where that bench had this fur thing on it. And he sat down and he said, "You're such a fucker." And I said, "Okay." He said, "No, you're such a fucker." And I said, "Okay." He said, you can fuck with this guy. Nobody else can." I said, "Okay." And I was like, man, game on, I'll take care of this fucker, you know what I mean? I had no idea about anything that he was going to, what had been said or anything. And we drove over to the diner. We sat down, and I sat in my bench, and I was like, Yeah, that's right, man. And we started right about 2 lines in. He made a funny. He said, "You can't fuck with him that much. I'll fucking kill you." I remember I was like laughing to myself because he got me all geared up, and he was like, "Careful, a little bit, maybe a little bit less." So I was definitely tickled about that. But I brought that up because I didn't know that he was going to call me that fucker. I didn't know any of that stuff until the night we saw it at the Ace. But I loved it. I felt like I had a lot of freedom as an actor, and I felt very playful, which I think is wonderful. I felt like I was able to be impulsive and follow my instincts and to really have like as much fun as I could in the circumstances, and as an actor, I felt like David was really empowering, like I feel like he really sort of underscored this amazing sort of idea that, he had chosen me, right, for this. So now it was mine and we were going to do it together, And so I felt like that I definitely carried on through all of my scenes, where I just felt really empowered by him, It was a great experience,
That's
I wish it
awesome.
had never ended.
Yeah. Now you brought up the whole doing your own stunt. Can you give any more information about that? Was there something was Mr. C with you and you were trying to shake him
Well,
off?
well, we were towed for our scene together, Mr. C and me, and that was a tow. We were towed,
Mm.
and Peter had rigged cameras, and we were on walkie-talkie, and and then the next bit that we were going to do, I made the joke. I said I do all my own driving, just so you know. And I was joking, but not really joking. I was like, I can drive, And so in that car, when I was going to run after I had fallen down and gotten through the very difficult part of the scene, and I was going to get to the car, David gave me like a list of things to do with the vehicle before taking off. And it was like rev it 3 times, jam it in reverse, lurch forward, jam it back in reverse, rev it 3 more times, lurch, 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 and then peel out, right? And man, I was like, dum, 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 dum. I was like, no problem, right? And I did it. I did all of it, and I could hear the freaking gravel shooting out the back, and I was like, yeah, nailed that. And then none of it was in there, but I do remember I did all of my own like lurching and pumping the brakes and
That's great. I love it.
yeah.
That's great. You brought up fucker. I mean, have you confirmed that tricked you fucker is ad-libbed by you? Because I feel like
Did I say that?
I don't know. I mean, I think you did. I don't know if you did. That's you've hinted at
I
it on
was
Twitter.
I
On
was
Twitter,
trying
you've
to check
hinted at
on
it.
whether I was allowed to talk about that because I have my script. Do you guys have a script
No,
of the
we could
returns?
use. We'd love to have a copy though.
Fail one
Well,
over.
no, I didn't know if people had cobbled them together.
No.
There's been
No,
talk about.
my line was tricked you was what was in the script. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with David, and we were just talking, and we were running through the gun stuff. I think a lot of the stuff you could see, there's not much that happened that wasn't shot by Jason for the stuff that came out in the Z to A. But yeah, we talked about it, and I remember when we were running through it, I said, tricked you. David goes, yeah. I said, fucker. And he goes, yeah. And I said, tricked you, fucker. And he goes, yeah. And he said, yeah, you say it like that and you shoot him. And I said, but guys say fucker too?
Mm-hmm.
He said, yeah, tricked you, fucker. And so it came in the moment it came up, and I mean, he knew. I didn't know that Mr. C had his moment about me,
Yeah.
earlier.
Really? So I just
Yeah.
assumed you knew about that fucker Ray, and you kind of brought it back around and said,
No,
"You're the
I didn't
fucker."
know. I didn't know about anything. In fact, I heard someone say something to Nicole my first night, and I was like putting earmuffs on. I was like, I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know anything that I'm not involved with, because I was just dialed in a certain way, and I didn't want any of that. I had already had to like make certain kind of choices and work a certain way to make sure I was serving my character and what David wanted, And so when stuff would like even be mentioned, it was very infrequently that I wasn't involved with. I really just tried to let it go because I only got my pages and even just the parts of my pages, I didn't really have a need for that. I think I told Scott my last thing I did, we did all the Red Room at the end. That was my last day, was my shot on the floor. David put the blood behind my head and we did the shot, and then the shot of the pedestal in the ring. And David said, get cleaned up and come back, because it was my last thing and they were going to say goodbye to me. And I walked out, so I left the Red Room, which is super intense, by the way, because it's huge. And especially as a fan, you're in there and you're like, this is like real. And I was the only one without booties on. So it was like, I'm really in the Red Room, And I walked out through the curtain, and all of a sudden, this crazy looking thing comes popping down the hall in this like green jacket, and he goes, "Hey, George." I was like, "What the fuck?" And it was Kyle, but he was like dressed like Dougie, and I had no fucking idea what that was or what was going on. And he gave me a hug, and I was in such a different place. I was like, this is a Twin Peaks moment, man, because I don't know like what just happened. I was like, I have no idea what's going on outside of my world right now, but I can't wait to see it.
Oh man,
Funny.
that's hilarious. This has been great talking with everybody. I
Yeah.
mean, this has been really special. I really thank you for your time. Scott, you want to pitch it one more time? I mean, we're talking now. It could be a few weeks. I mean, there might be very few tickets left. This is probably the time if people want to get the LA tickets, how they go
Yeah, I
about
mean,
doing.
one of the things that George said that sort of laid the gauntlet down is that he said every time Firewalk with Me has played in LA, it's sold out. So, and we should be able to sell this out. It's not that large of a theater. It's going to be intimate. It's going to be exciting. We're going to have books for sale. I'll be having the color copies of Lost Highway, and after Dallas, there's not going to be a lot left. I'm assuming the Firewalk with Me color copies will probably be sold out before that event. I'll probably have the black and white ones in LA. Come. We have the information coming out through the Blue Rose Twitter account or Facebook account. I'll be posting about it all the time, and it's going to be a special event. So we'd love to see everyone who's out there in LA. And if you need a little summer trip to do some David Lynch stuff, come play with us. And as always, it is good that Ben joined us as he does every time, and that Brian started the program and he's on the steps to recovery. And, we appreciate that as well.
Brian, we may have to edit this. I'm going to ask Scott something else here. So Scott, but regarding the Lost Highway,
What
That was a left field. What's
I
going
know
on?
because I don't like putting you on the spot.
You don't want to put me on the spot?
I don't like putting you on the spot.
I want to
Anyways.
be put on the spot.
We're not editing. This is all going. This is
Yeah,
all
it's-
going.
this is going.
It's
If
going.
I can't answer it, then that shame on me.
So Scott, I meant to ask you regarding Lost Highway, is this the new remastered Lost Highway film?
I can't believe you would have the nerve to ask me that question. I demand this to be removed from this program. I mean, after all the years I've come on the show,
Come on.
and,
We're done. We're
the
done.
relationship we would have, you have the nerve to ask me what version? Yes, it is the remastered that I asked them to show the remastered one. I know you could get 35 millimeter and that there's a coolness to it, but that's not what we're doing. We're gonna have the 4K one because I don't want to speak for David because I don't know, but I just have a feeling after talking with Sabrina for the book at the work that they did on it. I feel like that's the version that they really want out there. So
Yeah.
yes, it's going to be the 4K version. I saw it in Orlando when it came down here. It is beautiful.
It is
I mean,
beautiful.
it's nothing to take away with what they did before, but you know, in the interview with Sabrina, she really talked about this, how much damage the sandstorm had done to the film, and how in '97 they really couldn't clean that, and now they can. And you can just feel it. I mean, especially those scenes out in the desert. I don't know if everybody's seen the new 4K one, but I mean, it's night and day. And that's what we're going to be showing.
Yeah, so I feel like that alone, I feel like you should go see the film there just to be able to see Lost Highway 4K remastered there.
Yeah, and then to have Peter Deming like go through the hallway shot and that kind of stuff, I am just
Seriously,
I'm really excited because it really is beautiful. And what Peter Deming did, and Scott Rustler, the cameraman, like what those two, I wish we could get Scott out there, but he lives in the East Coast somewhere. I forget. It's one of the southern states. But I mean, what they did on that film is incredible. Just it's insane. Like all the art in Lost Highway is unbelievable. Anything else that you want to offend me with, sir?
If you said to me, no, it wasn't remastered, I would have felt awful that like you are getting the best version of Lost Highway, right?
We're getting the VHS.
Yeah.
That came out
Scott's
in
favorite.
1997, and we're hooking up a VCR.
It's a bootleg version of
Yeah,
and
we're putting.
it's not going to be rewound either. So when you guys start, you got to rewind the whole tape.
Yeah, it's gonna be the exact VHS copy that Scott turned off after 20 minutes and didn't rewind, and that you can't see anything. And yeah, poor Lost Highway. I love it. I love it so much, and I'm so glad that it got the Blu-ray release that it deserved finally.
Yeah, finally. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, George and Melanie and Scott. It was great talking to you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so excited for your event, and I hope people listening can attend.
And if you can't remember the name of the movie theater, just Google Music Hall 3. That's what it's been, referred to as for years and years and years. And you can buy tickets on their website when their power is back on. Which hopefully by the time this airs, that will be fixed, or else I will be very upset.
Thank you guys and everyone for putting this together. We always love coming here. It's nice to see you guys.
Yeah, nice to see you guys too. And we'll be back in a month with another show. You can email us at twinpeaksunwrapped@gmail.com. Find us at all the places. And if you have any questions, comments, or theories on Twitter, Ben's there, and I'm on the Facebook. And we'll see you guys in a month.
See you in a month.